And today we're going to talk once again about Cuba. So, yesterday, Donald Trump did not stop some Russian oil tankers headed towards Cuba. And he's going to allow the tankers to temporarily supply Cuba with oil, although it's only for about 4 days worth of oil. I feel like this is happening because he feels that they are getting the hint and they are negotiating, and there's stuff going on that we don't see behind the scenes that he would allow this to happen after him saying there would be no oil to Cuba. I feel like what he wants to show once again is that Cuba cannot afford to buy oil and they cannot operate as a country under communism and the communist model. If they had all the money in the world, they could, but they don't. So he doesn't want them to get oil for free. And like I said yesterday, Marco Rubio is saying any news that you hear about Cuba that's not from them is fake news. And he was saying that Cuba does not have the money to buy oil and he doesn't want them to get it for free. So when it comes to like Russia coming to the rescue, they are not buying oil from Russia. They are receiving it as a gift. So if they can let this communist regime fall and bring transparency to a system that does not work in an island that's on life support, then by the time the change comes and the island could become fully capitalist, then the whole world will see that it's the only way. Everything else does not work. And it hasn't been working for 67 years. And you cannot change the system unless you change the people in power. But we are not into doing a Russia-Ukraine situation where we just go and take over a country. We have to have probable cause. Are they hurting their own people? They support their own people. If there's 11 million people without power, food, or water, is that just as bad as killing protesters? If people die on ventilators who can't have electricity, is that the same as homicide? I think it is. And I think it's because we don't want that to happen. Let's pray that it doesn't happen because the world is full of people looking for destruction. But it's just a figure of speech, I would say. And it's kind of like a what if? What if the worst case scenario is people die because they don't have electricity? Then is that Donald Trump's fault or is that the communist regime's fault? And he just put a light on it. So at the end of the day, letting oil go to Cuba for humanitarian purposes is not the same as allowing them to be on the open market, bartering humans, which is slavery, doctors, for oil. And if we did that in America without exchange of capital, it is slavery. Because back in the day, the good old days of, the 60s, and, people in America were protesting about, slavery. But it happened 100 years before. But back in the days of slaves, what they did is they offered someone room and board in exchange for their labor. Now that is considered slavery. So what's the difference between sending a doctor overseas to a country they don't want to go while they're still making $2 an hour and putting them up in room and board in exchange for the country receiving oil from the country that doctor is being sent to, like Venezuela, Mexico, and Russia? And it's been very obvious that Russia also was recruiting Cuban soldiers for the Ukraine war, because they were shown impoverished. That's the only people who would pay. And Cubans would go to war in Russia against Ukraine just for less than $1,000 a month. But the families would accept it because they're still in a communist system. And it's the only money they had. So anyways, guys, it's really crucial right now because we're on day 30. And that's the day that everyone estimated day 30 of March, that Cuba's going to run out of oil, was at the end of March. And now he's sending them a little bit of a lifeline. I think it's because the negotiations are going well. So yeah, well, let me know what you guys think in the comments. When he said Cuba was next, Donald Trump said that, and he's been saying it a lot lately. Cubans are loving it. They're like, yes, annex us. Please take us away from this dictator. So we'll see what happens in the next couple of days, guys. We'll see you on the next one.